What's going on, guys? I got Rogan behind me. I always mess that up over there. Uh, but let's get right into it. I just want to apologize. I uploaded this video yesterday and there was no sound playing on the clips. And I was like, what's going on? Is this like a technology thing on the website? Like, what is it? It was just my software glitching out, reset things to default for some reason, and no sound came through. Apologizing for that. And the clip that I'm talking about is James O'Keefe and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sitting down to do an interview. This is subscriber footage only. Subscriber to O'KeefeMediaGroup.com. But I subscribe to it and I'm bringing it to you guys. I won't bring you the whole interview out of respect for James O'Keefe and what he's trying to build over at OMG. But I am going to show you the parts that I think people need to see, because this is an interview where Robert F. Kennedy got to shine, not just in terms of his stances on things, but in terms of his knowledge of U.S. history. And I think that's a big thing when you're trying to become president. And I think it's something that a lot of candidates that we're seeing right now couldn't do. And right now they're about to talk about the weaponization of fear, not just in America, but also in Europe, and some pretty amazing things that were attempted in America in terms of pushing aside constitutional rights in order to get a thing done, which is so not allowed and, in my opinion, a little un-American. And you'll be surprised which president actually tried to do it. But before we get into that, I just want to show you the Great Resist. It's a new design that I've put together. I love it. You guys know about the Great Reset. Well, forget about the Great Reset. We're all about the Great Resist. Resist having your freedoms taken from you. Resist having your privacy violated. Resist the Great Reset. And as you know, every single purchase of anything on the website helps us fight demonetization, helps us fight against them limiting our views for no reason. Let's get right into the clip. And this time, we'll have audio. And thank you for everybody who told me, because I had no idea. Thanks.
Constitutional and civil rights. So you had in Spain and Germany and Italy, you had the rise of corporatism and fascism, and in Eastern Europe, you had left-wing totalitarian regimes also using fear. And in our country, people completely at that point lost faith in our economic system. They were putting their money in their mattresses. About a third of Americans felt that the only hope was a communist regime, and about a third were turning toward fascism or following Father Coughlin or Huey Long, which were urging kind of totalitarian solutions. And Franklin Roosevelt said to people, that is the biggest fear, is fear itself, because that will allow it. We will get through this. We will get through it if we be still. But if we allow ourselves to be manipulated by fear, we will lose everything that we value.
Well, one of the things you've written is that fear has been stoked to provoke mass compliance. So is fear itself the biggest issue facing America right now?
I don't know if it's the biggest issue, but it has become weaponized by elements within the technocracy and in the kind of corporate kleptocracy to engineer compliance of Americans with things that most people would not put up with under normal circumstances. Censorship. We all know that it's wrong, that there's never been a time in history when the good guys have been the ones who are censoring people. And so Americans know, innately that that the government is not supposed to censor us. And yet we put up with it. We said, okay, those guys are scaring us and we need to shut them up. And, the Constitution doesn't have a pandemic exception. The First Amendment doesn't have a pandemic exception. And, the Constitution was written for hard times. And by the way, the founding fathers, the framers of the Constitution, knew all about epidemics. There were two epidemics during the Revolutionary War. There was a malaria epidemic that decimated the armies of Virginia. There was a smallpox epidemic that brought to a halt the armies of New England at the very time when we had taken Montreal. So Benedict Arnold's army had captured Montreal. But because they were undermanned because of the smallpox epidemic, they had to withdraw. Otherwise, today, Canada would be part of the United States. And everybody knew that. The framers of the Constitution knew, what had happened, that these illnesses had really injured the American war effort. And then between the end of the Revolution and the ratification of the Bill of Rights, which is about a 9-year period, there were epidemics in every city in our country that killed tens of thousands of people. There were smallpox epidemics, cholera epidemics in Philadelphia, Boston, New York, and cholera epidemics that took tens of thousands of lives. Everybody knew about it, and yet they did not put an epidemic exception in the United States Constitution or any other exception. And, we've been through much worse calamities than COVID-19. During the Civil War, we lost 659,000 troops in action or from disease, but troops on both sides. That's the equivalent of about 7,200,000 today. So much bigger, much larger death count than in COVID. But also our country was being torn apart. We almost lost the United States of America. And yet, when President Lincoln tried to suspend habeas corpus, the constitutional right, the court said you can't do that. And he was doing it for good reason. There were people in the cities who were Confederate sympathizers who were saying and doing bad things and inciting riots that threatened our country, that posed an existential threat to America. And Lincoln was trying to address that issue by getting those people, by silencing those people with habeas corpus, by locking them up. And the court said you can't do it. It doesn't matter what the calamity is. The Constitution has to survive through every calamity. So, but if you manipulate people's fear, Americans know these things. But if you manipulate them with fear, people will retreat and will choose a high percentage of people will choose security over, constitutional rights.
My experience is that most people are very afraid.
Wow. Abraham Lincoln. How about that? I had no idea that Lincoln tried to make something like that happen. And I mean, you could sit back, even as myself, I'm black, but even still, doesn't matter if they're Confederates and they're doing this or that. It's like you can't skirt around the Constitution. That's just how it goes. And that's why it's so special, and that's why it's so amazing. I'm never going to forget those words. It was very well said. It doesn't matter what the calamity is, the Constitution has to survive. That makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. And I would say something to live by. But I like this interview a lot. There's about 40 more minutes that I have to go through of the interview. I actually jumped ahead, and I think I have half of it to watch still. I'm not going to show the whole thing just out of respect to James O'Keefe and what he's trying to do at OMG, like I said. So, you can subscribe if you want. I'll show you a couple more clips. That would be it. But I just wanted to show this to more people because, RFK, he hasn't gotten a fair shake, really, when it comes to the interviews that he's had to do. A lot of it's been debating. It's been his stance on the pandemic and this and that. And, I feel like if he gets a chance to do a great interview, especially with a great interviewer, someone like James O'Keefe, people should be able to see it. But, never forget that. Knowing our history is so important worldwide. All history. I didn't know that these left-wing governments were trying to weaponize fear. The less that you feel like everything that's happening to you in the world is like the first time it's happening. Whereas if you're very educated on history, you know that this has happened time and time and time again, right? And, a lot of people, when they see maybe even what Biden's done with not even just Biden, there's been a bunch of presidents and prime ministers that have had to use like emergency, I don't know what to call it, but like the emergency, like mandates or whatever, what have you. They do it in case of emergencies. In France, they call it 49.3. It's just something that they do where they can just push aside everybody in the government and just push whatever law through that they have to push through. You feel like that's just happening for the first time, but it's not. It's something that, leaders have tried to do again and again and again. And in a lot of countries in Europe, it was able to happen. In America, it wasn't able to happen because of the Constitution. And again, that's why the Constitution is so special. So special. Imagine if every country in the world had a constitution. And I know some people will be like, hey, the Constitution's getting trampled, this, that. It's really not. It's really not. And yes, there are some people that are trying to skirt it. There's some people that are trying to find loopholes right now in the in politics, but it has to survive every calamity. And that's why the first and second one are there in order to uphold it. I think. Pretty sure. But other than that, I just wanted to show you guys that, and I'm out. And RFK, I like RFK. I'm sorry, I'm not hearing a lot of, I love Trump. Trump wins. Right now, they just announced that Trump is the winner. I'm happy. I'm like, okay, I'm happy. But I haven't heard him, I mentioned this before, I haven't heard him mention anything about CBDCs. I haven't heard him mention anything about a social credit system and denouncing it. I haven't heard him talk about the whole gender ideology thing that's going on throughout the country. I have not heard him address any of that stuff and condemn it, acknowledge it and condemn it, and talk about how he's going to push that aside. I just haven't heard it. And I've heard that from RFK, and I've heard that from DeSantis. I've heard that from Vivek, which I don't think Vivek has any chance of winning, but I've heard it from him. I haven't heard that from Trump. I think that's something that he really has to acknowledge. But again, what do I know? I'm a high performance coach, right? I'm a life coach, right? I'm just doing this reporting thing, just because I can, and you guys seem to like it. But other than that, don't want to keep droning on and on. I am out. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think in the comments? The weaponization of fear. I know that some of you have probably seen it, in the past 3 years, 4 years. Older people, probably 10 years, 20 years for some people even. Do you think it's still going on, or do you think it's worse today than it was before, or do you think it's always been like this and now the people are just waking up to it because of all the information we have access to? What do you think? I'm out.